Well, it's a new year and a new episode. Welcome back to the Cinegration Station. Today, your conductors Ryan, Eric, and AJ talk about future-proofing a home, as well as access points and different types of wiring. So stay tuned for that now, here on the Cinegration Station.
Welcome to the Cinegration Station. This is Ryan, one of your conductors, and we have a few other conductors here today.
This is AJ.
And this is Eric.
What's up, guys?
Good.
How's it going?
How are you?
Just busy like everybody else in this office, right?
Yeah, I think this is the first time this year in 23. This will be
right.
the first recording of the new year. So today we wanted to kick it off by talking about the future and future-proofing a house.
Good topics for a new year.
For very good.
And we have a bunch of projects going on now that are being built up, being wired, planning ahead, thinking about what's to come in the future for our smart homes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you definitely got to think about the future. Conduits, cabling,
wiring, especially now that I've been doing that exterior lighting at my house. I've realized how much more wire my whole house has to have. I gotta run a direct burial 4-wire or 5-wire even out to all the different spots in my house.
Now, I want to take a step back just because I have some friends that are now listening to the podcast, and they have no idea what conduits and wiring is. So I'm just going to give a brief explanation. So when you're building the house, I think it makes a lot of sense to have access to future places later after all the walls are up. So we want to run some sort of tubing or piping between locations, i.e., like an AV rack over to a media room, which gives us a little bit more future insight to plan ahead. So hence the conduits.
Yeah, I think conduits are really important. I think all homes should, at a bare minimum, have a conduit run from the rack equipment area up into the attic or into the serviceable retrofit space of the home, whether that's another spot of the crawl space, or usually it's the attic.
Totally. I mean, it makes so much sense to have that access.
We just got done pre-wiring a house, and we ran conduit to each TV, like the 2 main TVs, the rec room, the family room, basement to attic, and then projectors. My brother's building a theater right now, so projector to the rack. And then the other one is out to the demarc, like to the side of the house where the feed and the utilities come in. So I think is important.
And what do you think you could do for the future if you have all that space to run? Is it like fiber? Do you think it's fiber? I
think fiber is a good, it's definitely easier running than a conduit, a fiber, because it's super thin wire. But yeah. I think fiber is good. It's future proof to the main locations. I always recommend, fiber to the office, to the main TV room, media rooms, because you can do HDMI over fiber. So.
Speed of light.
So, I think it's important. Yeah.
So as a user, why couldn't you just run all the runs in a house with conduit? Why couldn't you just do conduit in a house? I remember when I first started doing this back in the early 2000s, there was a book I read, and it talked about how the best wiring of a home.
You read books?
A long time ago I did. Yes, it was a
paper.
My
books?
kids. My kids, actually, they've seen all these old science fiction books from Arthur C. Clarke that I have in my basement. And they're like, Dad, you read all of those books? There's like 600 pages in those books. And I'm like, yeah, that was pre-phone, man. So that's what you did
like,
to Steve.
It was like 4,000 scrolls of their phone. That's how many book pages it was.
They just rated everything by scrolling.
Yeah, I gave Ryan a book for for the holidays here, and I was like, I didn't know if you knew what that was, but I was just like, are you going to read that?
I get to learn from the best now. It's the textbooks used for art. Why am I forgetting the title? But it's Glenn Merlin Johnson, who's the author, and it's his book about lighting and how to go about designing lighting solutions and the technology that supports it.
Nice.
Now, you mentioned the question about wiring a house and conduit. I mean, I think it's brilliant. It's just really cumbersome sometimes to have conduits everywhere because you could just pull wherever you need, whenever you needed it. And then I guess it's the back end. It could look really messy, like kind of Swiss cheese in the wall. Like, how many runs do you go to?
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, I think you also just physically run out of space. And the other thing is when you run conduit, you're still also running the wire. So it's literally double duty.
Yeah.
So you're paying a person to run a wire, and you're also paying a person to add a conduit. So then you're adding it twice.
That's why I don't think you need to get carried away with it. I think, if you run it to the main locations, you run it to the attic, where you might have to retrofit. When I built my house, I had them run a 2-inch conduit from basement to attic, and that gives me plenty of space to grow into. But it's definitely something that you need to do.
So what about wiring? Would you?
The other one that I did on this last pre-wire was we actually ran Christmas wire. Because everybody's retrofitting and trying to figure that out these days with Jellyfish and Trim Light and these other guys. But we actually just stubbed out the soffit for the lighting. It was a 16.4, and then we ran it to a closet where they're going to put their whole control box and power outlet
for the outdoor Christmas lighting.
Yep, there was two pop outs for the eaves, and we run it along the fascia and so on. But that was something we've never pre-wired for, but I think we're going to start doing that more often. So
after a few successful projects, we're all about it now.
Yeah. It was a lot of work to retrofit that exterior lighting in my house.
Exactly.
It took a lot of finesse. I have a really funny story about a hole in the wall at my house.
A new hole.
So you know how like when you're working on your own house, you don't measure. Right, because it's your own house. I know. I've lived there for 6 years, and I knew exactly how far it was from the door to the garage door. And I drill the hole, and I shoot the fish tape in, and Megan's on the other side. I'm like, all right, so do you hear the fish tape? And I've got a good 20 feet in there, and I'm whacking it around, and I had shot the fish tape through the wall. It went into the foyer, and it was like going off into the living room. And so I went straight through the wall, and I missed it by about 7 inches. I was just 7 inches off about where I needed to be on my drill shot. In a real home, in a normal house, I would have measured and not done that. But my house on a Saturday afternoon, it happened.
Measure 0 times, cut twice.
Exactly.
So another thing that we were going to talk about was we talked about EV charging, plumbing. I know those were things that we were going to talk about for future proofing too, which is it's a little bit outside of our realm of what we do, but I feel like we're still involved with that.
It's conduit. It's conduit. It's still conduit.
Unify is actually even coming out with an electrical vehicle charger. So we may even start proposing those in our proposals. In the coming.
I feel
months.
like it's not. I feel like car chargers are not so plug and play. It is plug and play theoretically, but you need to know how much charge am I going to get, how quick, and I guess does it maybe throttle between two cars? If you have one car that's low, one car that needs to get topped off, it probably goes through some sort of computer analysis.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And also the newer cars. I know the new Ford Lightning, I think, is the battery one. It can supposedly power your house in the event of a power outage. So if it was plugged into a charger at your house and you lost power, it would then provide power. I still don't understand how that's possible, because for example, in my house, in order for me to run the battery without the power being off, is I have to physically disconnect power from my house to the street. And if I don't do that, then, hypothetically,
right? Yeah, because you have solar.
Yes.
So you are a little bit more complex then.
Well, I have solar and a battery. So electrical code says that when your house loses grid power, power in your home that's producing must be disconnected. So if you had solar and you lost power in your house, you would not have power because there's no power coming from the street. And the whole purpose here is you don't want to be backfeeding electricity up a wire that the linesman doesn't know exists. So
let's talk to Ford. We'll talk to Ford, get those details together, figure out how they're going to...
Well, I think it's a transfer switch. I think it's just a big switch that you would flip in your garage, and it would basically over...
And there's probably a best practice that they tell you to go by. Maybe it's certainly certain circuits that it could light up.
Yeah, it's probably have a sub panel of some type.
I thought it was automatic when you lose power, boom, it clicks over to the battery and battery kicks over.
Yes, my house does flip over automatically, but my house also kills power from the street when that happens. So if it doesn't detect power coming in, then the street gets disconnected and my house becomes a microgrid. And the problem is that's what it's called. And if you don't do that, then imagine if there was a car wreck and a big transformer got whacked out at the car thing, right? Excel is going to have one side of that wire is going to be hot. Well, the linesman just assumes the side going to the neighborhood is dead. Yeah. And in this case, it wouldn't be.
Sure, because being backfed.
Yeah, so it's dangerous. And so that's why you're supposed to be disconnected from the grid in the event of a power outage. I know that sounds a little weird, but that's the ruling. So I imagine it's a switch of some type.
I like
that gets
the
installed.
idea of microgrids because my energy bill was very high this month.
Mine was too.
I feel like if there was some way to really break it down to do the small scale renewable, and then you just connect locally. I know we're jumping off topic now, but yeah, that was a sore bill to see the other day.
Huh.
Yeah,
check mine.
I've talked to a couple of my friends, and everyone's bills are up drastically.
Mine is more than double.
Mine is 5 times, TK? Dang. Yeah, mine's up. Mine's definitely up at least 100%. I'm going to do some shifting of the loads in my house over the next couple of months. So we'll see if I can shave it down.
So, and this is an example where I think I could apply, like, it would be so good to have conduits or provisions. So if I wanted to do solar or some other sort of renewable, I feel like I'm a little bit limited because I don't have that capability with my older home. But, in hindsight, it'd be nice to be like, I could just, plug in solar, so to speak.
So I wanted to get back onto the future proofing. So some of the big stuff that I thought about when we were going to talk about future proofing is running a data wire. Data is king now. So I know everybody is on this big kick of wireless IoT boxes and this and that, but if you can hardwire them, everything instantly becomes better, and it becomes more long term, more specifically. And I guess that's a big point, is that if I'm going to buy a product and I assume it's going to have a usable shelf life of a year or two, like a Ring doorbell, in 3 years or so, the Ring doorbell gets kind of messed up. And so by having a hardwired version, it just naturally lasts longer. Sure. I don't know about in the Ring example. It's probably a bad example in this case, because the reason the Rings get all jacked up is because you're pushing the buttons on the front. So remember the Doorbirds with the little
motion
like
sensor?
you're just breaking it the more you use it.
Yeah, the original Doorbirds had this weird ball, like half cut out ball in the front of it, and people would mistake that for the doorbell. And so sure enough, you'd go out to a house and it'd be caved in,
cracked, and then water gets in, and then it's...
Well, even the Unify ones, those little plastic doorbell buttons, they're always cracked. I go to every house and they're cracked. It's probably people pushing in really hard, but it's plastic, and then if the sun's beating on it too, it's
baking it.
It's gonna, those things aren't built that well,
So hardware needs to get better.
Yeah.
And software is king, right?
That's software is always king. So that's.
So let's jump into the jobs that we talked about future proofing, because now we're going to talk about what are we actively doing on projects, not just out in the ether talking about.
So for us, I think a big thing we're trying to do, we recommend running a conduit to the attics. That's kind of a given.
Yeah.
A big thing is preparing for shades. I think if there's one thing I would wire a house for, it's for shades.
Yep.
And
after you living with it, after me living with it, I went in, I just do all the windows. I know it's expensive, but in the end, it just makes life so much easier.
Yeah, it's an expensive cost, but it's a necessary cost.
And we're doing it so often now, and I feel like people do get the idea. They're like, yeah, we'll do it. And even if it's just a future thing, like maybe, but it's so inexpensive to put the wire in, and we already see so much value out of.
So do you think it's necessary to actually run the Lutron wire versus like 16.4? Is there that big of a difference?
The shielded aspect?
Well, Lutron will tell me yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So officially, I'm going to say yes, you must run the Lutron wire.
But I'm running my Hunter Douglas off 16.4, and I'm only using using two wires.
So Hunter Douglas, the communication is wireless, but the power is through the wire. So
for power view specifically.
yeah, and so in that case, I think a 16.4 is fine.
I mean, two wires as backup, basically. I mean, you could really do 16.2. And so that's what I'm thinking about. Do I retro 16.2?
If you know what you're buying, sure.
And I'm good.
If you know what you're buying.
Well,
But-
right.
You know, you want those nice wire.
Right. Well, a lot of
Lutron
times we don't
shades.
know if the customer's going to buy or what they want Lutron or if they want Hunter Douglas. So it's
Or
like
where,
you're
or-
prepped for both.
Yeah, and where specifically the detail of where are you going to push out this wire? Like where in the the window are you going to pop this wire out?
You're so right, because we have to fix that so many times. Like, you know, the trim carpenter is like, I'll just
inside
pull
mount,
it out
outside mount.
right in
Yeah.
the corner, so no one can mount anything in this thing.
Right. Where are you going to mount it? That's where I'm going to put the wire.
Right there, right wherever you're gonna put your screws, where that wire's going. But yeah, I mean, it's just that level of detail, and to your point, the coordination of where that wire pops out of your window or the door is like paramount to a successful install.
Yep.
So I think another big wiring I would do is I would run for a lot more access points in my home. I'm realizing now as the technology and the cost of access points and networking equipment has gone down so much, the idea is to have more of them and lower the
spread
Wi-Fi,
of
the spread.
Yeah, like how far and how amplified the signal is from that access point.
Yep. Exactly, like almost creating a real like mesh network of types.
And so what kind of wire do you run to an access point? It's Cat 6, Cat 6A,
HDMI, the blue wire, red wire,
Cat 6, yeah.
Cat
wire.
6, perfect.
We're using purple wire right
so
now.
when
for
I
access
was,
purple
points.
Cat 6.
Yep.
When I first started doing this in the early 2000s, my old boss would always buy the bargain wire that Liberty AV or one of the wire companies would have, and so we'd always get made fun of at the job sites because it'd be like pale green and Easter green, and like these kind of colors, and like the fire guys.
It's like the next day's bread wire. You know, he's like, I'm just getting whatever you got.
Well, we always knew when we bought the wire or when the job was wired because we could tell by the color of the wire. You know, in the later in the year, Liberty AV, I think was the wiring company at the time. They would always give us like darker colored wire, so we'd always have like green wire and we never did red wire, thank God. But
Yeah, that'd be confusing.
yeah, only
red's probably not a
use
good
red
idea.
for fire. Period. And
Yeah.
don't ever use it for anything else.
Well, just to let you know, I am changing all of the colors of our wire. So we're doing orange and blue for our two datas at each media location,
Orange and blue.
and we're doing yellow for cameras, purple for access points,
You're
and
very close to Denver
Pink.
colors. So we got Bronco,
Yep.
we got the Bronco Run, and we got the Denver Nugget. We got the yellow
Yep.
and the blue.
yep, pink for touchscreens.
Yeah, I like
So
the white.
It's nice
I
to
like
have
that,
that rainbow, rainbow bundle at the end because it's just so much easier to decipher what wire is for what.
This sounds like a step up. I like the idea of us using the color coordination.
Yep.
And it'll make it so much easier, actually.
Yep. It's
It
called
is,
the rainbow spaghetti.
I just
Rainbow
be careful
spaghetti,
when
Italian style.
the having multiple colors is great from a from an install standpoint because you can obviously tell which wire is which. It's very obvious. The downside is that if you start, let's just hypothetically say one of those rooms had a bad wire and we had to use another wire in another room for another purpose, and now your color scheme is going nuts. Do you cut the wire back and then put the right color on?
I think it would actually make sense to have a tape that corresponds to those colors, and if you did need to turn a yellow wire green, maybe there's some green tape you could put on the end. That way you're like, hey,
That's electrical. Yeah. So if you repurpose a wire in an electrical box, say like turn it into a neutral, you are supposed to fully make mark the wire as white.
mark it appropriately as if it were.
Or if you're going to do a hot, it needs to be black. That kind of thing.
This is us setting the standards. Love it.
So would you do what about security devices? What about
Wireless.
like water sensors?
Water sensors. So pre-wiring for water sensors, I think it makes sense to do the obvious locations, like, one in the mech room, one in like kitchen
Laundry
sink,
room.
like below the sink, those supplies. But the wireless are still, I feel like, just so
it's
much
taking
easier
over.
to deploy and to just like have flexibility, not be too limited by a wire itself. But
In security world, wireless is taking over. It's so much cheaper. It's so much easier to install.
And the batteries last so long
Yeah.
that it's fine.
I mean, every single time it's guaranteed that the builder is going to screw up that wire at the door. So you're going to end up putting in a wireless contacts anyway. So is it really worth running wire to a door? You got to pick and choose your battle there, but
yeah,
it's
maybe.
a tough one. So
It's maybe worthwhile,
I
but
know.
wireless is still good. And especially two-way feedback, knowing like, hey, my battery's getting low. That's
Yep.
really convenient too.
yep.
Yeah, the benefit of having a wireless device is that you have built-in tamper resistant too. So if for example, like a motion detector, a wireless motion detector, if you pop it off the wall or mess with it in any way, it flags a tamper. Unless you added another wire for tamper protection, a normal hardwired motion detector wouldn't do that.
Gotcha.
So
Interesting.
there are some
Yeah.
benefits there.
Yeah.
Every room should definitely have a network jack, a data jack for sure. I'm realizing that in my house.
As standards.
Yeah, I'm running 3 cats now to main locations and 1 coax. A lot of times this is like debatable. Do we even run coax? Like, nowadays cable boxes are wireless, or you can do it network based. So is it worth
You get stuck
running
doing the same
coax?
thing for so long. I feel like it's hard to not do a coax. But
I know.
The,
I
the
think you need
explanation,
one, but yeah.
You need one, I think.
But I think 3 cat is important because it just expands your capability of what you can do, future proof.
So I have a story. Eric Klein was actually with us. He went up to a job in Boulder, and I have a customer up in Boulder, and he's a great customer of ours. I've known him for years and years and years. And when I first wired his house in 2004, he has the most wire of any home I've ever done.
The most wires.
in
So
his
at the
house.
head end, it's just a mess of wires
He has-
dripping into the closet.
Yeah, he's an ex-engineer. I think he did something with credit card software or something like that. But his house has 255 locations, I guess is a good way of putting it. And each location has 2 RG6, 2 Cat 6, and 2 Cat 5e. Remember, in 2004, Cat 6 was, 2004, Cat 6 was kind of
Cutting edge.
yeah, it was sort of in its infancy, and I punched down every single one of those wires, and at his head end, he actually has a commercial grade patch panel where I terminated all of those wires. So he has 255 locations, and each location has 4 cats and 2 coaxes.
So this is
So
a home
you
built as an
terminated
office.
those?
Yeah.
What?
Oh
You
yeah.
terminated those? You
I
punched those
terminated
down?
every one of those.
So he has 253 locations that doesn't work?
Oh no! I tested
Sick
every
burn.
one of those. That's no. I tested every single one of those jacks in that house.
That's
my
a
God.
commercial solution for a house.
It was.
It's very much
It was-
an
I-
office, or even like
Yeah.
like a hospital would have, that sort of layout.
Yeah, I've even talked to him we were up there actually last week, and even now, he was like, oh, we need an extra cat for the Dune player. We were going to do in his master, and we're like, we got it covered. I mean, I don't even have to think about it. There is a cat or a data jack on every wall of the house.
Yeah, you don't even have to second guess. Like, yeah, we got it.
Yeah,
because the
there's-
wire is within an arm span away wherever you are.
Dune player? What's a Dune player? I actually pulled I have a Dune player, but I actually pulled the power cord so I could power up my pressure cooker this weekend.
So it's the same power cord between your Dune player and your pressure cooker.
Same power cord. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Nice.
mean, it's ultimately right. Like all power supplies, it's either 12 volt, 24 volt, 5 volt, 9 volt. They're all pretty much the same. And so you just look at them. I mean, that's why we have the little power supply farm downstairs of all the old ones. Every now and then I have to go find them. Like, does anybody have a 5 volt, 3.5 amp?
Just get the power
Yeah,
cord from the pressure cooker
so
and
we're-
just use that for everything.
We're
Yeah.
future proofed. We have every cable you could absolutely
Yes,
need.
that is.
Whenever-
in a box.
Yeah, I think if I were to build my own house, shades, a lot of electrical wiring, a lot of I would definitely pick a place in my home as a hub for my wireless gateways. Right now the going trend is to have a gateway device and then have your peripheral device in the house, right? So like August locks are a good example. You have the August lock itself, and then you have the gateway, which communicates Bluetooth to the lock, and then that gateway then connects to your network. And so if I were to rebuild a house, I would make a spot in my home specifically for housing all of those gateways.
Those RF gateways.
Yep.
And the reason you do that is because the lock itself, it would make more sense to communicate with less power. So it communicates with the gateway, and the gateway is what is hardwired, which allows the Wi-Fi to always, or RF to always be connected.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah, and then like Lutron has the Ketra, so like that hub
The
would go
gateway,
there.
yeah.
The Hunter Douglas hub, the
bridge.
Philips Hue hub, the every other hub.
How many gateways do you have in your
I
house?
think I have 7 actually.
That's it?
It's,
Oh man, I thought it was 7D.
No, I have 74 Zigbee devices.
Have
in
you
my
had your
house.
brain scanned recently for any abnormal activity?
I did actually get a brain scan done during COVID, and
Good.
that is a whole nother conversation we're not going to go into.
Got it. Is it twice the size of a normal person or something like that?
No, I was missing a wave. Apparently, there's something
sorry
like the
to hear.
delta wave. It's like your sleep wave or
I can
something,
see
and
that.
she's like, it just doesn't show up on your scan. And
Delta wave.
I don't.
That's like
really
the
know.
Delta Tetra. You get that from
Gamma.
THC, I think, that you sleep better.
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe, but no. The D does not help me go to sleep. No,
Got it.
So
Okay.
All right, back at it.
yeah. So Eric, so like, well, you just built a house like last year. What
2
kind of
years ago,
future proofing do you wish you would have done already?
More shade wiring on the main floor, because I know I can retrofit that second floor because I looked at it the way it was built. But I mean, otherwise, there's just no way to retrofit stuff like that. So I wish I would have wired the main floor. I wish I would have wired a few more speaker locations, and then maybe some more, for light, like tape light and stuff like that. Sure. It was tempting to just say, hey, let's just tear out the whole ceiling on the main floor and redo all this because, the builder didn't allow me to do any specifics or specialty wiring.
Yeah,
I
they
had to
didn't give
pay
you as many
for it.
options
Yeah.
during the build out.
Yep. So, I mean, there's a lot of things in hindsight I would have done, but, it wasn't a full, custom home, so I didn't have control over that. But, that's why I purposely didn't finish the basement, because I know I'm going to be fishing up wire, retrofitting, and I've already done some. But if I didn't have to fish wire, it would just be so much better. Just get all the wire done. It's worth it. So.
Yeah, and I guess to that point, we're actually working right now on quite a few really, a large quantity of low voltage pre-wires, but we're giving the opportunity, and the builder is, to these homeowners and these new home buyers to make any and all selections that they want to any of the houses. So in this case, they are provided a lot more flexibility, but we could just, advocate and explain, hey, here's your options, here's what we recommend.
Yeah, I mean, shades, it's expensive. It's, $200 a window to wire a shade, 16.4 to a window. I mean, and it's not an easy task. I mean, to get the wire right there in the corner, 3 inches away, it could be difficult. There's a lot of stud pack. I mean, just very difficult, but it's very labor intensive. So,
And you pray your trim carpenter doesn't smash your wire.
yeah, I mean,
Behind the boards.
Inevitable.
so it's just something that I wish I had more of, because, hey, you use your shades every day, and having those run automatically is so nice, and it's just one less thing you have to worry about. But, having to change batteries is kind of a pain. So, if it was hardwired, ideal, So that's something I, in hindsight, would have done. So more conduit probably to TV locations or media locations, I think would have been ideal. And then when I finish the basement, I'm going to have conduit everywhere. So I think it's just going to
Have you? What about temperature sensors, humidity sensors,
motion sensors,
environmental sensors? Really?
I wish I would have had motion sensors like in the bathroom, powder bath. Kids leave the lights on, but if you had a hardwire motion sensor, which I think you can easily do with a security wire, and literally, if there's no motion, turn off the light. We use that in the powder room, but it's a wireless motion sensor. So, but there's a lot of good options with flush mounted motion sensors, which can be built in and just be less, be more discreet.
So a trick with motion detectors, specifically in bathrooms, is put the motion detector as close to the floor as you can and as close to the doorway as possible.
That's what I did. My 18-month-old literally picks it up and takes off with it. So it's like now it's up a little bit higher, but yeah. So there's one problem. But if it was flushed in, if it was hardwired, then he couldn't get it. So there's another reason to hardwire.
I find the Zigbee devices, they respond really quick. It works out really well. The batteries have lasted, years. I think in the 6 years, I've only replaced the battery once. Nice. In the back of the motions, and the nice NYCE, the nice sensor, it's really thin. It's actually called a curtain motion, and it's designed for horizontal tripping. And so I just put it and I just stuck it right next to the baseboard, and it works great.
Yeah. Triggers any scene that you want to happen.
Well, really, it's bathroom scenes. You just when motion detects, you turn on to the preset level of the time of day, and then. Normally every 10 or 12 minutes, you set a 10 to 12 minute timer or so, and then every time there's motion, just reset that timer.
Reactivates the scene.
Yep, and it just keeps triggering, and then
talking about reactivating scenes. So now we're in a new year here, and we're reactivating the year, and we're short of time, so that we're going to transition on the, what are we going to be doing for this new year? And it sounds like we're going to be implementing some new cabling and wiring practices for our organization. We're going to be talking about future-proofing a lot now, kind of keeping that on the forefront. But what are some of the other things that we're looking forward to in the new year?
So there will be a big push, I believe, this year for better user experiences for the smart home genre. Right now, everyone, it's like you said it, I think in past times, there's like app soup, where you have a whole bunch of apps in the whole thing. And Control 4 has always been our way to combine all those apps together.
Yeah.
And what you're going to see in the next couple months is whole user experiences really geared toward taking that to the next level.
The focus on UI.
Yeah, I think with the new protocols coming out, Matter, Thread, basically Matter, that was the whole thing at CES this year. Now everything is going to start talking to each other. Apple HomeKit, smart things. These other guys are going to be able to start talking to each other and start playing more, I think, in the smart home world versus a professional, type system like Control 4 and Crestron and so on.
Because we're met with so much incompatibility in our industry. Yep. It's good to see, but I think it'll kind of shake things up a bit.
Yeah, it will. But I think it'll just, explode our business even more, because it's just going to make people aware, like, hey, there's a lot more out there. There's going to be so much more devices that they're all going to want to talk to each other. So it's only growing. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's. Do you have something?
No, I'm good. I always can talk, but
we can always keep talking too. But this is a great kickoff to the new year. I'm excited to see where the Cinegration Station is going to go, we will catch up soon.
There you go. Another important conversation about access points and wiring for the smart home. You can find the Cinegration Station on every major podcast platform: Anchor, Google, Spotify, and Apple. Please go like and subscribe, share with a friend. Please leave a comment or a question. We would love your feedback. Anyone interested in making their business or home smart, please reach out to www.cinegration.com. Leave a comment or a question on there about making your business or home smart, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Until next time, stay smart.